Throughout the world, geologists and paleontologists find physical anomalies they cannot explain with the evolutionary theory. Hello, I'm John Gusty, and through a blending of scripture and scientific observation, the Hovind theory is a fascinating explanation of the flood, the Ice Age, the formation of coal, mountain ridges, and the Grand Canyon.
And we have Jared on the phone. Is this the same Jared from yesterday?
What?
Is this the same Jared that called in? Was it yesterday or?
Yes, in the previous 4 days before that, I think.
Yeah. Did you get converted yet?
Oh, I've already been converted before. I'm deconverted. Yeah.
Oh, deconverted. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead. We can fix that. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, we're gonna try.
If you could, and I wouldn't go crazy, and I wouldn't think that I was violating every part of my rationality. It sounds like a pretty good idea.
Well, it's perfectly logical and rational to believe God created the world. He did it in 6 days, and He did it 6,000 years ago.
I think that it's perfectly rational to believe that a God could have created the universe, but I think that the sixth-day theory is a wash, and I think pretty much all of modern science is against you in that regard. I wanted to talk about the polystrate. Is that how you say that?
There are several ways: polystrate or polystrata.
Polystrata sounds a little bit better.
Okay.
Polystrata fossils. I was reading up on that because I wasn't quite prepared last time that we talked about this. I may be misrepresenting what the rebuttals say. If that's true, I want somebody else to call in and take you on it because I'm just not an expert, you know. But from what I understand, the problem here is that you don't seem to be acknowledging the possibility that these sedimentary layers could have been deposited very quickly.
Wait. No, Jared, you're totally wrong. You're not open to the idea that sedimentary layers deposited quickly. That's the whole idea behind the flood.
But I know, that's what I was going to say. It's kind of strange because your flood perspective would seem to indicate that you do accept that this can happen, but just not in this context. Geologists explain these polystrata fossils via rapid sedimentary deposits.
Good, precisely my point.
Okay, well, they don't think it's evidence of a global flood, though.
Well,
it doesn't contradict the geologists.
How else could they explain it? They have to say there was a flood, just the same way they explain, predominantly all the fossils.
Not a flood per se, and even the cases where there are floods involved, which they do acknowledge, they don't say that they're worldwide floods. They say that they're local floods.
No, I didn't say worldwide, but they have to invoke a flood.
Well, a flood by itself is nothing uncommon in geology.
Well, see, if the younger creationists saying there was a worldwide flood, everywhere we go and we show flood evidence, they can say, okay, yeah, there was a local flood here. And we go somewhere else and say,
flood there.
Yeah, they can say local flood here, local flood there, local flood everywhere, local floods, we're okay.
That's kind of like saying that just because I can always find, no matter where you go on the Earth, you can find evidence that it has been, 60 degrees Fahrenheit. That does not show that the entire planet was 60 degrees Fahrenheit homogeneously at any given point.
Well, you don't just find these in certain strata. You find these in practically every stratum.
I'm not sure about that claim.
Okay.
Well, okay. What about the one I mentioned the other day? For those that don't know, if you go to my website, Dr. Dino, go to the Jonathan Science and then articles, Science and then articles. There's an article about polystrate fossils, petrified trees that are running through multiple layers.
Right.
There are several of them, including some in Cookeville, Tennessee, and I show pictures on video number 4 of a petrified tree running through 2 seams of coal.
Right.
How do you explain that, Jared?
Basically, coal, from what I understand, coal can form from proto-coal. It doesn't have to just be an instant reaction. It's a very slow reaction. So one type of sediment can get laid down and then coalify over time.
How much time?
What?
How much time? Yeah.
How much time?
To make coal.
I have no idea, but I'm going to go ahead and respond to what you're going to want to say to this. My impression is that the sedimentary layers get laid down over the tree, and the tree gets completely submerged in some kind of mud or clay substrate. And then the different layers of it can fossilize in different ways because it's malleable. You still move those layers around.
Correct.
But I think what it sort of does is partially fossilizes the tree. And then as the layers accumulate, they re-fossilize that part of the tree in layers. That's my understanding from the geologist's explanation of this. Like I said, I could be wrong, but that's very plausible.
Yeah, let's say the bottom 10 feet was stuck in the mud and the top 20 feet was not stuck in the mud.
Well, they say it's all stuck in the mud. It's all
good. Well, then they're right on track. They're going to eventually be an independent Baptist when they get done studying all this.
Oh, my gosh. How can you say that?
Well, because that's where the truth is. So if the petrified trees are standing up, would you agree that if I can show you a tree that is connecting, say, 25 layers,
That's
that
a lot of layers.
at least those 25 formed very rapidly?
How tall is each layer that we're talking about here?
I know I've seen pictures of trees 25 and 30 feet tall.
So 25 layers would be 1 foot a layer.
Layers can vary greatly, as anybody knows, a study like the Grand Canyon. Sometimes
Sure.
they're 10 feet thick, sometimes they're 2 inches thick. Sometimes they're missing altogether.
But to have 25 layers on a 25-foot tree, the average layer height has to be 1 foot.
Sure, okay, let's take that as an example. Would you agree that at least that 25 feet of sediment and those 25 consecutive layers formed within probably, maybe less than a year before the tree? You think it would take longer than that?
I don't, like I said, I'm not a geologist, but from what the geologists say, the current scientific opinion about this is that those layers were initially laid down rapidly,
right,
and then they were slowly replaced by more and more layers of layers of fossilized soil and coal and other types of material.
How do you replace a layer of sediment 30 feet down?
How do you replace the materials inside of the tree to begin with? How do you petrify a tree? The chemicals outside get swapped for the chemicals inside, keeping the chemical structure roughly the same.
How do you replace a whole layer of sediment, which is vastly different than a tree?
I don't know. There's all kinds of geological events that cause these things to happen. I'm not a geologist.
Well, for those of you out there who want to read what the long-age geologist is saying, like, are you familiar with Ian Flemmer? He wrote the book Telling Lies for God. Have you ever heard of that?
I don't think so.
He's a geologist. He was on NBC or something like that, talking about I think it was Discovery Channel, something like that. They were bashing young Earth creation and saying how stupid we were. But he wrote a book called Telling Lies for God, and in there he talked about the polystrate trees and fossils and stuff like that. And AIG wrote a point-by-point rebuttal. Apparently he practically skipped over the polystrate fossil section, even though he is a geologist. He's an evolutionist and a long-ager. So, I don't understand why he would skip over it if it's not a problem. I know that I read the article on Talk Origins. They said the answers have been here since, late 1700s, early 1800s. But
the most reasonable answers that aren't current day answers, but 19th century, the polystrate fossils were addressed then, as Darwin's theory was kind of growing, and then we have slightly different explanations today. I don't really understand the differentiated details, but the explanations are different. The point of the Talk Origins article is just that this has already been rebutted in the past, and that it's kind of a drag.
It's been kind of side-slappily addressed. It hasn't been answered. See, it doesn't matter. It's just like me saying, oh, God did it, God did it, God did it.